Tom Walker's the name. You folks probably heard of me at one time or another. In fact, there's a popular saying in New England, a kind of proverb. You've heard it. The devil and Tom Walker. That was me, alright. It's not a very pretty story, but one I like to tell. And to all you who may be listening, I'll tell you one thing. It's a story you can learn from. About the year 1727, just at the time that earthquakes were prevalent in New England and took many tall seniors down upon their knees, we lived. I was a real miserly fellow, and my wife was just as miserly. We even conspired to cheat each other, if you can believe that. Whatever that woman could lay hands on, she hid away. A hen could not cackle, but she was on the alert to secure the new laid egg.
Tom, I heard that hen. What did you do with the egg? What is it, Tom? Tom! Tom! Tom, did you hear me?
I was continually praying about to detect her secret horse, and many affairs were the conflicts that took place about what ought to have been common property. We lived in a fortune-looking house that stood alone. It had an air of starvation, a few straggling southern trees, emblems of sterility, grew near it. No smoke ever called from his chimney, no trouble stopped at his door.
There was a deep inlet winding several miles into the interior of the country from Chelos Bay, and terminated in a thickly wooded swamp or morass. On one side of this inlet was a beautiful dark roof. On the opposite side, the line rises abruptly from the water edge into a high ridge, on which grew a few scattered oaks of great age and immense size. Under one of these gigantic trees, according to all the stories, there was a great amount of treasure buried by Kidd the pirate. He was also known as William Kidd. You may have heard of him. He was tried and convicted for murder and piracy in Henning, London, in 1701. Well, anyway, the inlet allowed a facility to bring the money in a boat circularly and at night to the very foot of the hill. The elevation of the place permits a good lookout to be kept that no one was at hand, while the remarkable trees form good landmarks by which the place might easily be found again. The old story said, moreover, that the devil presided at the hiding of the money and took it under his wardenship, but this is well known. He always does with buried treasure, particularly when it has been ill-gotten. Be that as he may, Kidd never returned to recover his wealth. My wife and I had a bad name in the community. She was a tall, skinny woman, fierce of temper, loud of tongue, and strong of arm. Her voice was often heard in wordy warfare with me, and sometimes she even gave me a waller or two. No one ventured, however, to interfere between us. I shrunk within myself at the horrid clamor and clapper going. I took the den of the score skins and hurried on my way, rejoicing as if a bachelor in my celibacy. One day I went to a distant part of the neighborhood and took a shortcut through the swamp. Like most shortcuts, it was an ill-chosen route. The swamp was thickly grown with great gloomy pines and hemlocks, some of them 90 feet high, which made it dark at noonday. It was a retreat for owls of the neighborhood. It was full of pits and quagmires, partly covered with weeds and mosses, where the green surface often betrayed the traveler into a gulf of black. Smoothly removed, there were also dark and stagnant pools, the abodes of the tadpole, the bullfrog, and the water snake, where the trunks of pines and hillocks lie off-drawn as rotting, looking like alligators sleeping in the mire. I had long been picking my way cautiously through his treacherous forest, stepping from tuft to tuft of rocks and ropes, which afford precarious footholds among deep slopes, or pacing carefully, like a cat, along the prostrate trunks of trees, strayed now and then by the sudden screaming of the barn, of the quaking of a wild dog racing on the wing from some solitary pool. At length, I arrived at a firm piece of ground, which ran out like a peninsula into the deep bosom of the swamp. It had been one of the strongholds of the Indians during the wars with the first colonies. Here they had thrown out a kind of fort, which they had looked up upon as almost impregnable, and had used as a place of refuge for their schools and children. Nothing remained of the old Indian fort but a few embankments, gradually shrinking to the level of the surrounding earth, and already overgrown in part by oaks and other forest trees, the foliage of which formed a contrast to the dark pines and hillocks of the swamp. It was late in the dusk of evening when I reached the old fort, and I paused a while to rest myself. It was scary as hell, but I wasn't a man with fears of any kind. I reposed myself for some time on the trunk of a fallen hillock, listening to the budding cry of the treetop. I developed with my walking self into a mound of black mold at my feet. As I threw up the soil unconsciously, my staff struck against something hard. I raked it out of the vegetable mold, and a cloven skull with an Indian tomahawk buried deep in it lay before me. The rust on the weapon showed the time that had elapsed since its death blow had been given. Humph! I'll just give it a little kick to shake off the dirt.
Let that skull alone.
I lifted my eyes and beheld a great black man sit directly opposite me on the stump of a tree. This stranger was neither Negro nor Indian. He was dressed in a rough half-Indian garb, and had a red veil or sash swathed round his body. But his face was neither black or copper color, but swarthy and dingy and begrimed with soot, as if he had been accustomed to toil among fires and forest. He had a shock of coarse black hair that stood out from his head in all directions, and he bore an axe on his shoulder. He scowled at me for a moment with a pair of great red eyes.
What are you doing on my grounds?
Your grounds? No more your grounds than mine. They belong to Deacon Peabody.
Deacon Peabody be damned. As I flatter myself he will be, if he does not look more to his own sense and less to those of his neighbors. Look yonder, and see how Deacon Peabody is faring.
I looked in the direction that the stranger pointed, and beheld one of the great trees, fair and flourishing without, but rotten at the core, and saw that it had been nearly hewn through, so that the first high wind was likely to blow it down. On the bark of the tree was scored the name of Deacon Peabody, an eminent man who was wealthy by driving through bargains with the Indians. I looked around some more and found most of the tall trees marked with the name of some great man of the colony, and all more or less scored by the X. The one on which he had been credited, and which had evidently just been hewn down, bore the name of Crownage Hill, and I remembered a mighty rich man of that name, who made a vulgar display of wealth, which it was whispered he had acquired by buccaneering.
He's just ready for burning. You see, I am likely to have a good stock of firewood for winter.
But what right have you to cut down the Company body's timber?
The rights of a prior claim. This woodland belonged to me long before one of your white-faced race put foot upon the soil.
And pray, who are you, if I may be so bold?
Oh, I go by various names. I am the white huntsman in some countries, the black miner in others. In this neighborhood, I am known by the name of the Black Woodsman. I am he to whom the red men consecrated this spot, and in honor of whom they now and then roasted a white man, by way of sweet-smelling sacrifice. Since the red men have been exterminated by your white savages, I amuse myself by presiding at the persecutions of Quakers and Anabaptists. I am the great patron and prompter of slave dealers, and the Grand Master of the Silent Witches.
The out of all witches that, if I mistake not, you are the commonly called Old Scratch.
The same at your service.
Well, since I'm such a hard-minded fellow, no easily downed, my nerves weren't shaken too much by meeting this stranger in such a dark, lonely place. Besides, after living so long with such a miserable wife, I didn't even fear the devil. Anyway, Old Scratch and I started to have a real, serious, earnest conversation.
Let me tell you something, my good fellow. There are great sums of money buried by Kidd, the pirate, under the oak trees of the Hyde Ridge, not far from the morass. All these are under my command and protected by my power, so none could find them, but such who propitiate my favor. Since you are a likable fellow, I will place these treasures within your reach, but only under certain conditions.
Well, I never discussed what these conditions were previously, but you all being an intelligent audience can easily surmise what they were. After all, I'm not a man to stick to trifles when money is in view. What proof have I that all you have been telling me is true?
There's my signature.
He placed his finger on my forehead. So doing, he threw among the thickets of the swamp, and seemed to go down, down into the earth, until nothing but his head and shoulders could be seen, and so on, until he totally disappeared. When I reached home, I found the black print of a finger burned into my forehead, which nothing could obliterate. My wife greeted me with a bit of the news.
Tom, Absalom, Crownage Hill, the rich buccaneer. Died suddenly. It was announced in the papers.
So, let the fear butter rose. Who cares? I really didn't want to tell her the event of the day. I mean, I really left this with her. Naturally, all her avarice was a weakness and the mention of hiding gold, and she urged me to comply with the black man's terms, and secure what will make us wealthy for life.
Tom, are you a crazy man? You idiot! How are you going to do it? Think of all that gold. Damn it, man! You're going to do it.
Don't you tell me what to do, woman. I ain't sending myself to the devil, especially not to please you, you old wench. Many and mighty were the quarrels we have after that, but the more she talked, the more resolute was I not to be deigned to please her. At length she determined to deride the bargain on her own account, and she decided to keep all the gain to herself. Being of the same fearless temper as myself, she set off for the old Indian fort towards the close of a summer's day. She was many hours absent. When she came back, she was reserved, silent in her replies.
Tom, there was this black man who was hewing at the roof of a tall tree. He was sulky and would not come to terms. I told him I would come back again with another offering.
The next evening, she set off again for the swamp, with her apron heavily laden. I wait for her, but in vain. Midnight came, but she did not make her appearance. Morning, noon, night returned, but still she did not come. I now grew uneasy for her safety, especially since I knew she had the silver teapot and spoons and other valuables in her apron. Another night elapsed. Another morning came, but no wife. In a word, she was never heard of more. What was her real fate nobody knows. The consequence of so many pretending to know is one of those facts which has become confuted by a variety of historians. Some asserted that she lost her way among the tangled mazes of the swamp and sank into some pit of slough. Others, more untouchable, hiding that she had eloped with the household money and made off to some other province, while others surmised that the tempter had disclosed her into a dismal quagmire, on the top of which her head was found lying. In confirmation of this, it was said a great black man with an axe on his shoulder was seen late that very evening coming out of the swamp, carrying a bundle tied in a check apron, with an air of surly triumph. However, I'll tell you the truth. This is what happened. I grew pretty anxious about the fate of my wife and property, so I set off at length to seek them both at the Indian fort. During a long summer's afternoon, I searched about the gloomy place, but no wife was to be seen. I called her name repeatedly, but she was nowhere to be heard. At length, just in the brown hour of twilight, when the owls begin to hoot and the bats to flit about, my attention was attracted by the clamor of carrion crows hovering about a cypress tree. I looked up and beheld a bundle tied in a check apron, and hanging in the branches of the tree was a grey vulture perched hard by, as if keeping watch upon it. I leaped for joy. I recognized the apron is supposed to contain the household valuables. Let me get off of the property, I thought, and I will endeavor to do without this woman. I scrambled up the tree, and the vulture spread his wide wings and sailed off. I seized the apron, but woeful sight, found nothing but a hardened liver tied up in it. That was all to be found of my wife. She had probably attempted to deal with the black man as she had been accustomed to dealing with me. But though a female skull is generally considered a match for the devil, in this sense she appears to have had the worst of it. She must have died again, however, for I noticed many prints of 11 feet deep staying about the tree,
and I found handfuls of hair that looked as if they had been plucked from the coarse black shock of the black man. And yet, all Scratch must have had a thought time of it. Well, I consoled myself for the loss of my property and the loss of my wife. After all, I am a man of fortitude. I even felt something like gratitude towards the black man. He had, he had really done me a kindness, so I sought out a future acquaintance with him. Hello, old Scratch. I'm back. I thought we might discuss our business dealings a bit further. Old Scratch, can you tell me, how can I get at the pilot treasure?
Well, I'll tell you, Tom. I've been thinking, and I think any money found through my means should be employed in my service. How about employing it to fit out a slave ship?
Forget it. The devil himself could not attempt me to turn a slave trader.
Alright then. How about becoming a usurer? You shall open a broker's shop in Boston next month.
That sounds fine to me. I'll do it tomorrow if you wish.
You shall lend money at 2% a month.
Yet, I charge Paul.
You shall extort rents, foreclose mortgages, drive the merchants to bankruptcy.
I'll drive them to the devil.
You are the usurer for my money. When will you want the cash?
This very night.
Done.
Done. So, we shook hands and struck a bargain, and a few days later there I was, Tom Walker, seated behind my desk in a counting house in Boston. My reputation for a ready money man who would lend money out for a good consideration soon spread abroad. Everybody remembers the time of Governor Bachelor, when money was particularly scarce. It was a time of paper credit. The country had been deluged with government bills. The famous land bank had been established. There had been a rage for speculating. The people had run mad with schemes for new settlements, for building cities in the wilderness. Land jobbers went about with massive grants, in townships, in Eldorados, landing nobody knew where, but which everybody was ready to purchase. In a word, the great speculating fever which breaks out every now and then in the country had raged to an alarming degree, and everybody was dreaming of making sudden fortunes from nothing. As soon as the fever had subsided, the dream had gone off, and imaginary fortunes with it. The patients were left in a doubtful plight, and the whole country resounded with the consequent cry of hard times. At this propitious time of public distress did I set off as outsider in Boston. My door was soon thronged by customers, the needy and adventurous, the gamble speculator, the dreaming land jobber, the thriftless tradesman, the merchant with cracked credit. In short, everyone is driving to raise money, but desperate means and desperate sacrifice hurried to me. Thus I was the universal friend of the needy, and not like a friend in need. That is to say, I always accept good pay and good security. In proportion to the distress of the applicant was the highness of my terms. I accumulate bonds and mortgage, gradually squeeze my customers closer and closer, and send them at length dry as a sponge from a door. In this way, I made money hand over hand, became a rich and mighty man. I bought myself a nice house, out of ostentation, but left the greater part of it unfinished and unfinished, out of parsimony. I even sent up a carriage in the fullness of my vainglory, though I nearly stared the horses which drew it, and as the ungraced wheels rolled and screeched on the axe set of trees, you would have thought you heard the souls of the poor debtors I was squeezing. As I was old, however, I grew thoughtful, having secured the good things of this world. I began to feel anxious about those of the next. I thought with regret of the bargain I had made with my black friend, and set my wits to work to cheat him out of the condition. I became, therefore, all of a sudden, a violent church ward. I prayed loudly and strenuously, as if heaven were to be taking my foot off lamps. Indeed, one might always tell when I had sinned once during the week, by the clamor of my Sunday devotion. Still, in spite of all this strenuous attention to forms, I had a lurking dread that the devil, after all, would have his due, that he might not be taken unawares. Therefore, I always carried a small Bible in my coat pocket. I had also a great folio Bible on my counting house desk, and would frequently be found reading it when people called on business. On such occasion, I would lay my green spectacles in the book, to mark the place, while I turned round to try some unserious bargain. I grew a little crack-brained in my old days. One hot summer afternoon in the dark days, just as a terrible black thunder gust was coming up, I sat in my counting house, in my white-lined cap and India silk morning gown. I was on the point of foreclosing a mortgage by which I would complete the ruin of an unlucky land speculator for whom I had professed the greatest friendship. The poor land jobber begged me to grant a few months' indulgence. I had grown testy and irritated, and refused another day.
My family will be ruined and brought upon the parish.
Charity begins at home. I must take care of myself in these hard times.
You have made so much money out of me.
The devil take me if I had made a farthing. Just then there were 3 loud knocks at the street door. I stepped out to see who was there. A black man was holding a black horse, which sniffed and stank with impatience.
Tom, you camphor.
I shrank back, but too late. I had left my little Bible at the bottom of my coat pocket, and my big Bible on the desk buried under the mortgage I was about to foreclose. Never was sinner taken more unawares. The black man whisked me like a child into the saddle, gave the horse the lash, and away he galloped with me on his back. In the midst of the thunderstorm, away we went dashing down the streets, my white cap bobbing up and down, my morning gown fluttering in the wind, and my steed streaking far out of the pavement at a very bound. The black man had disappeared. I never returned to foreclose the mortgage. A countryman who lived on the border of the swamp reported that in the heat of the thunder gust he had heard a great clattering of hoofs and a howling along the road, and running to the window caught sight of a figure, such as I have described, on a horse that galloped like a mad crowd across the fields, over the hills, and down into the black hemlock swamp towards the old Indian fort. And that shortly after a thunderbolt Falling in that direction seemed to set the whole forest in a blaze. The good people of Boston shook their heads and shrugged their shoulders, but had been so much accustomed to witches and goblins, and tricks of the devil, in all kinds of shapes, from the first settlement of the colony, that they were not so much horror-struck as might have been expected. Trustees were appointed to take charge of my effects. There was nothing, however, to administer. On searching my coffers, all my bonds and mortgages were found reduced to cinders. In place of gold and silver, the iron chest was filled with chips and shavings. Two skeletons lay in my stable instead of my half-starved horses, and the very next day my great house took fire and was burned to the ground. Such was the end of yours truly and my ill-gotten wealth. Lay all gripping money brokers, lay this story to heart. The truth of it is not to be doubted. The very hole under the oak trees, whence I dug King's money, is to be seen to this day. And in case you are all wondering what state I am now, and from where I speak, I can only tell you that on many a stormy night the people up here can see a figure in morning gown and white cap running through the streets on horseback. There is a troubled spirit, they say, of Tom Walker.